Welcome to Coins Hunter USA, the home for rare and valuable American coins. If you're passionate about hidden treasures in your pocket change, you're in the right place. In today's video, we're going to uncover the fascinating story of the Washington quarter, a coin that looks ordinary but can hold extraordinary surprises. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you might start checking every quarter in your collection a little more carefully. Top 1 today. We're going to talk about a coin that at first glance might look like an ordinary piece of change, but in reality, it holds an incredible story and can be worth a fortune, the Washington quarter from the year 1967. Now, what makes this coin so special? The year 1967 was a very unusual time for American coinage. Because of a nationwide coin shortage and the removal of silver from circulating quarters in 1965, the U.S. Mint suspended mint marks and made some major adjustments in how coins were produced. That means quarters from this year carry a special place in numismatic history. Collectors know 1967 quarters are part of the so-called transitional era, which always makes them more interesting and collectible, but let's go deeper. Not every 1967 quarter is valuable, of course. Most are still just worth 25 cents. However, what makes some of them extremely rare and worth incredible amounts of money are the errors and special characteristics that occurred during minting. For example, there are well-known double-die varieties where the letters or numbers show doubling, giving the coin a distinctive and rare look. There are also off-center strikes, where the design is not aligned properly with the coin surface, making them instantly recognizable. Another type of error that has shown up in 1967 quarters is the struck on wrong planchet error, where the coin was accidentally struck on a piece of metal meant for another denomination, like a dime. This creates a one-of-a-kind rarity that collectors go crazy for. And let's not forget that coins in pristine condition, those graded as mint state or higher, are far more valuable than those that have been in circulation for decades. A sharp strike with full details and a lustrous surface can multiply the value many times over. The 1967 quarter also holds historical significance because it came during a period when people were starting to collect state by state and year by year, leading to the coin collecting boom that followed in the 1990s with the state quarters program. For many collectors today, finding a flawless or error 1967 Washington quarter is like holding a piece of history in their hands. So why should collectors pay so much attention to this particular year? It's simple: rarity plus demand equals value. Coin enthusiasts know that finding one of these error-filled or high-grade quarters is extremely difficult, and that scarcity is exactly what pushes prices sky high. And now, here's the exciting part that will make you want to check your pocket change and coin collections right away. Some rare and special 1967 Washington quarters have been sold in auctions for jaw-dropping amounts. In fact, the value of one of the rarest examples reached an incredible $99,000. Top 2. We are diving into a coin that may look completely ordinary at first glance, but in reality, it hides a fascinating history and the potential for astonishing value. We are talking about the Washington quarter from the year 1971. This coin marked the beginning of a new chapter in U.S. coinage. By 1971, the United States had officially moved away from silver quarters. Just a few years earlier, in 1965, the Mint had stopped producing quarters with 90% silver and instead switched to a copper-nickel-clad composition. The 1971 Washington quarter is part of this new era, struck in massive quantities at both the Philadelphia and Denver mints. To the average person, it was just another piece of change used to buy gas, groceries, or maybe a soda at the corner store. But to collectors, the 1971 quarter holds secrets that make it anything but ordinary. On the obverse, you'll see the familiar portrait of George Washington, designed by John Flanagan, a design Americans had already known for decades. On the reverse, the bold and powerful bald eagle spreads its wings, a symbol of freedom and strength. But what sets certain 1971 quarters apart isn't just their design, it's the small details, the errors, and the remarkable conditions in which a few of these coins have survived. Let's talk about those errors first. Minting errors are like hidden treasures in the coin world because they were never meant to exist. Some 1971 quarters show doubling on the date or on the lettering. This is what collectors call a double die error. To the naked eye, it looks like the numbers or letters are slightly shadowed or duplicated, and when spotted, these quarters become highly desirable. Another fascinating error is the off-center strike. This happens when the blank planchet isn't aligned correctly, causing part of the design to be missing. Some are off by just a small margin, while others can be dramatically misaligned, making the coin look almost abstract. The more dramatic the misalignment, the more valuable the coin becomes. And then there are planchet errors. Imagine a quarter struck on a wrong type of blank, like a coin made for another denomination. A 1971 quarter accidentally struck on a dime or nickel planchet would be a true one-of-a-kind rarity. These are the kinds of coins that get collectors talking, because they're both mysterious and incredibly hard to find, but errors aren't the only path to rarity. Condition plays a major role. The vast majority of 1971 quarters have been heavily used in circulation. They've passed through countless hands, been stacked in registers, scraped against other coins, and lost their original shine. Finding one in pristine, mint state condition is like finding a time capsule. Professional grading companies like PCGS and NGC have certified only a small number of 1971 quarters at the highest levels of preservation, which instantly sets those coins apart. Think of it this way: when millions and millions of coins are struck, only a handful manage to survive the decades without damage. Those few survivors are the ones collectors chase, because they represent the very best examples of their kind. Add a rare mint error on top of flawless condition, and suddenly you have a coin that goes from ordinary pocket change to an extraordinary prize. The 1971 quarter also has a special place in the timeline of American coinage. It bridges the gap between the silver era of the 1960s and the commemorative state quarters that began in 1999. For collectors, it's a reminder of a transitional period in U.S. history, when coinage was adapting to new metals and a changing economy. It's a humble-looking coin, but it carries an important legacy. Now here's the part you've been waiting for. While most 1971 quarters are worth just 25 cents, a select few, those rare pieces with dramatic errors and preserved in the highest grades, have been valued at an astonishing amount. The rarest examples of this coin have reached as high as $93,000, yes, you heard that right, $93,000 for a single quarter. It's almost unbelievable to think about. A coin that millions of people once carried in their pockets for everyday spending could today be worth more than the cost of a car, or even a small house. That is the magic of coin collecting. It's about uncovering those hidden gems, learning the stories behind them, and realizing that something so ordinary can become something truly extraordinary. So, the next time you come across a Washington quarter from 1971, don't just spend it without a second thought. Take a closer look. You could be holding one of the rarest treasures of modern U.S. coinage. Top 3. We're taking a closer look at a coin that might seem completely common at first, but when you learn its story, you'll never see it the same way again. We are talking about the Washington quarter from 1991. Now, by 1991, the Washington quarter design had already been in circulation for decades. People were so used to seeing George Washington's portrait on the obverse and the eagle with spread wings on the reverse that most never gave these coins a second thought. But for coin collectors, the 1991 quarter holds a surprising amount of mystery, rarity, and in certain cases, incredible value. Let's start with a little background. The 1991 quarter was struck at multiple mints, including Philadelphia and Denver, with hundreds of millions released into circulation. That might sound like way too many for any coin to be considered rare, but here's the thing: it's not just about how many were made, it's about how many survived in perfect condition or how many carry unique minting errors that set them apart. Errors are one of the biggest reasons a 1991 quarter can turn from a simple 25-cent coin into a collector's dream. Some of the most fascinating errors on this coin include double dies, where the date or lettering looks like it has a faint shadow or duplicate image. To a casual eye it might look like normal wear, but to collectors, spotting a true double die error means the coin instantly jumps in value. Another error to watch for is the off-center strike. This happens when the coin blank isn't properly aligned during minting, causing part of the design to be missing or shifted to one side. Depending on how far off the strike is, these coins can range from unusual curiosities to incredibly valuable rarities. and let's not forget about planchet errors. Imagine a 1991 quarter struck on the wrong metal blank, like one meant for a dime. These mistakes are very rare, but when they do turn up, collectors will pay thousands because these coins are one-of-a-kind accidents from the mint itself, but rarity doesn't only come from errors. Condition is just as important. Most 1991 quarters have spent decades bouncing around in pockets, drawers, vending machines, and cash registers. They're scratched, worn, and dull. Finding one in pristine, uncirculated condition is extremely difficult. Grading companies like PCGS and NGC only award the highest grades, like mint state 67 or 68, to a tiny fraction of coins, and these top-graded examples are the ones collectors battle for. What makes the 1991 quarter especially exciting is that it falls into a transitional time, just before the state quarters program launched in 1999. Collectors today look back at these early 90s Washington quarters as part of the last chapter of the classic eagle reverse design. That alone gives them a bit of historical importance. Combine that with an error or near-perfect preservation, and suddenly, this ordinary coin becomes something extraordinary. Now let's get to the part you've been waiting for, the value. While most 1991 quarters are only worth face value, a few rare examples, especially those with dramatic minting errors and preserved in the highest grades, have shocked collectors with their price tags. Believe it or not, one of these rare 1991 Washington quarters has been valued at an incredible $76,000, yes, you heard that right, $76,000 for a single quarter. It's hard to imagine that a coin so many of us once carried without a second thought could end up being worth that much today. That's the beauty of coin collecting, you never truly know the treasure you might be holding until you take a closer look. So the next time you find a 1991 quarter in your change, don't just toss it aside. Inspect it carefully, you might just discover that you're holding a hidden gem worth far more than you ever expected. Top 4. We're looking at a quarter that many people dismiss as just another piece of pocket change, but coin collectors know it can be so much more. We're talking about the Washington quarter from the year 1994, a coin that hides surprising secrets, fascinating errors, and in rare cases, a jaw-dropping value. The 1994 quarter belongs to the long-running Washington series, which began back in 1932. By the 1990s, this coin was one of the most familiar designs in American coinage. On the front, you'll find the bust of George Washington, modeled by John Flanagan, a design that had already been in circulation for over 60 years. On the reverse, the proud eagle sits with wings spread, clutching arrows and olive branches, a symbol of both strength and peace. It was a design every American recognized instantly, but familiarity often hides treasures in plain sight. The Philadelphia and Denver mints struck hundreds of millions of these quarters in 1994. That means most of them are incredibly common and still turn up in change today. But here's the catch, rarity isn't always about how many were made, it's about how many survived in special conditions or with unusual characteristics. And this is where things get really interesting. Collectors are particularly fascinated by mint errors, and the 1994 quarter has its share. Some coins from that year show double die errors, where parts of the date or lettering appear doubled. These may seem small, but for collectors, they represent a major find. Then there are off-center strikes, where the design is shifted away from the center, leaving part of the coin blank and part heavily distorted. Depending on how dramatic the misalignment is, these can sell for impressive amounts. Planchet errors are another area of fascination. Imagine a 1994 quarter struck on the wrong type of metal blank, such as one meant for a dime or a foreign coin. These accidents are extremely rare, but when they surface, they're worth a fortune because they are essentially one-of-a-kind creations of the U.S. Mint itself. Even without errors, condition is critical. Most 1994 quarters have been heavily used in everyday circulation. They've been rubbed down, scratched, and dulled after decades of use. Finding one in pristine mint state condition, with full luster and no noticeable flaws, is incredibly difficult. Professional grading services like PCGS or NGC reserve their highest grades, like mint state 67 or 68, for only the very best examples, and these top-graded coins are the ones that send collectors into bidding wars. What also makes the 1994 quarter particularly interesting is that it comes just a few years before the launch of the wildly popular 50-state quarters program in 1999. Collectors often see the early 90s Washington quarters as the final stretch of the classic eagle reverse design, which adds an extra layer of historical appeal. These coins are, in a way, the last of an era, before America's coinage shifted into a new and collectible chapter. Now let's get to the part that everyone has been waiting for, the value. While the vast majority of 1994 Washington quarters will never be worth more than 25 cents, a tiny fraction of them, with rare mint errors or preserved in the highest possible condition, have shocked the coin world with their prices. In fact, some of the rarest examples of the 1994 Washington quarter have reached as high as $67,000, yes, you heard that right, $67,000 for a single quarter. It's truly amazing to think that a coin so many of us once spent without a second thought could carry that kind of value today. That's what makes coin collecting so exciting. It's not just about metal and design, it's about discovery, rarity, and the thrill of knowing that something small could turn into something extraordinary. So the next time you see a 1994 quarter in your change, don't ignore it. Take a closer look. You might be holding a rare treasure that could change the way you think about coins forever.